So we just carry on talking about the colors.
Do you want to come from the other
No?
side again? It's not so often that Bach actually gives you any instructions or indications as to the stops that to use. But in these particular pieces, there's a quality not so much of grand, heavy, Baroque church music, but more a spirit of chamber music. In fact, these particular chorales were pieces that he himself arranged from music he wrote for the cantatas, with instrumentalists and singers. And so here we need this wonderful sort of sparkling effect. And you see the organ then it just babbles and chatters to one in this charming and rather intimate way, not heavy. And when the melody comes in, he tells us on this particular piece that it's not to be deep and low, but it's actually meant to be light and bright at quite a high pitch. That's not the sort of sound that you associate normally with the pedals. But so here is Bach writing in this entirely intimate and sparkling manner. But then there are other pieces by Bach, like the big prelude and fugue in A minor, which we'll play. Now here, it's as if one feels the cold winds, the sea, the North Sea, which he knew, of course, and those sharp, fierce winters, and playing the organ in frozen churches. And one hears that. One hears the dignity and hears music lifting us from something which is actually really very cold and very bleak and very inhospitable into a place of inspiration. But then I also mentioned I'm playing music by Alain. Now, Alain really was experimental in some ways. His music does not follow the sort of grand French symphonic style that perhaps we know from the music of Widor and César Franck. It's actually music which is very personal. It's eccentric, it's peculiar. And he wrote some of these pieces for a strange organ, which they had, he and his father, his family, they had at home. Not normal, it had experimental, strange sounds. And we tried to recreate some of those. I shall play a very famous piece, perhaps his best-known piece, called Litanies, in which he constantly repeats a sort of prayer over and over again. And he says at the end, in this particular piece, if you're not exhausted and screaming at the end, the performance is wrong. And then there's another one, a fantasy, in which he says that he's quoting from the Rubaiyat, an old Persian poem, in which it says, at last I was desperate and I cried to the sky to ask the way. And the sky shouted back, actually, very softly, follow your instinct. And in this sort of way, Alain paints a very unusual and eccentric landscape. You asked me about colours. I don't know what the colours are, but the emotions are there, and the wonderful colours that the organ can offer is perhaps a way into the expression of those ideas.
Thank you.